Welcome to SportsBeat Live, our weekly chat about the Royals with the folks in the media that know them best. And we do it with you. Send us your questions and comments. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Before we introduce this esteemed panel, I want to thank our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System. You'll be hearing from them later in the show. Today we've got Lynn Worthy, the Stars beat writer for the Royals, and Vahe Gregorian, columnist. Hope you guys are doing okay.
I'm doing okay. Wish I had the anchorman's desk here to wear
to hide the legs.
With unfortunately put the shorts on, but I'm here. I don't want to call attention to that.
No, we won't call attention to the shorts you're wearing, Vahe. Good call. It's only going to be like 98 degrees today, and but you're going to Chiefs camp later. Is that why you're wearing shorts?
There's a few things up in the air. Maybe Chiefs camp, maybe Royals. If I go to the Royals, I'll go home and put on pants. A few things.
But maybe Beth can train the camera up so we don't get the legs in there. But anyway, please send us your questions and comments. We're going to talk about the recent hot run that the Royals are on, and then we're also going to talk about the upcoming trade deadline. Who are the leading candidates who could be dealt? Certainly, a lot of names floating around out there. About Royals and trade bait. So let's get started, though. A week ago, I was sitting here with Sam Mellinger. It was just the two of us because you were on your way, Lynn, to Omaha to catch Bobby Witt's first game in AAA. And Vahe, you weren't here, so it was just Sam and I. And the Royals were off that day. They had just lost 2 out of 3 from the decrepit Baltimore Orioles. And coming out of the All-Star break, it was just awful. And this team was like, are you kidding? Sam and I were trying to come up with, where does this rank in terms of low points of the season for the Royals? And it ranked up pretty high to lose 2 out of 3 at home to the Orioles, to get shut out by Matt Harvey in one of those games.
I was going to say, to add insult to injury, Matt Harvey and Jorge Lopez were the starting pitchers in the games that you lost for the Orioles.
Former Royals, of course. Well, since then, it's been a little bit of a story for the Royals. I know this until I read the game notes after last night's game that the Royals, with a 6-game winning streak, now have the best record in baseball since the All-Star break at 7-2. So, who to thunk, and what's going on? Why is it happening? I've got my ideas, but I want to hear it from you, Lynn. What is going on with these Royals? What are they doing now that they weren't doing in building one of the worst records in baseball?
To me, it starts with the starters. You look at 6 straight wins, and I believe in those 6 games, you've got 5 quality starts out of those 6 games. The only one that they didn't have was Hernandez had a rocky outing. But aside from that, starting with Minor and then coming all the way back around to Minor again last night, you've got quality starts. You've got Brad Keller looking like what people thought he was going to be going into the season. We've seen Minor with good start. You saw Daniel Lynch, who people had sort of like given up on after 3 appearances, shoves for 8 innings scoreless against a team that basically dismissed him back to the minors. So that it starts with the pitching. I mean, there's more to it than that. They've obviously been swinging the bats and been hitting the ball out of Kaufman on a regular basis, but the pitching's where you start.
It's been amazing, starting pitching for this stretch. As Lynn said, 5 out of 6 quality starts. I think the ERA, the collective ERA among the starters is 3.06, but that includes Carlos Hernandez, who had the rough start. In a game against the Tigers that the Royals came back and won, and this has happened against, they won 2 from the Brewers, 3 from the Tigers, and then they beat the White Sox last night. You think, the Tigers are in there, but the Tigers are really hot. I mean, when the Tigers played the Royals, they had moved into 3rd place in the Central. They were closing in on 500, the Tigers, and then the Royals just took 3 from them, including that 9-8 game, which was amazing. The comeback down 6-0, and then of course the Daniel Lynch game. That's worthy of breaking out as a separate here. What Daniel Lynch did, and things are going well for the Royals when you get 8 scoreless innings from a guy who just was not ready for prime time earlier this year.
And Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but first time in franchise history a starter had gone that far into a game within his first 4 starts, something like that. It was a little bit of qualified, but it was long for a rookie, and especially a guy in this context, right? And Look, I don't know. I know we were it was a little jarring what happened when he first came up, but I don't quite think any of us thought, well, he's done. I mean, I think the thought really was, okay, there's some things that went awry. He's got to go back down and sort some stuff out. But I hear Dean's voice in my ear a little bit about trusting the talent and just, at some point figuring that some of that stuff was going to work out. Now, I think the opposite end is true now. I don't know that we can expect him to go 8 every time, 8 shutout innings every time.
What? Really?
Just saying.
Sorry.
But that makes
That's
me.
my expectation. I'm sorry.
He set the bar.
He will disappoint me.
Yeah, we know he can do that. He better be doing it.
That type of logic and reason is not going to fly on Twitter, Jorge.
Well, let me say this. Speaking of logic and reason, this team at every turn seems to defy that. We know that baseball swings wildly, right? There's trends and changes all season long in baseball, but I don't know how many times I've kind of decided, well, that's what this team is, and just been wrong. Like, 11, best team in baseball first month. Well, they pretty good. I think they're going to do okay. 11-game losing streak. They're done. All-star break, come out, lose 2 out of 3. Well, they didn't reset at all.
Right, right. And now the 6-game winning streak's the longest for the Royals this season. And, and starting pitching, of course, is everything. So the rotation now, Lynn, they're still a 5th starter down, aren't they? I mean, we're talking.
No. Hernandez
Hernandez
is still in there.
still be in the rotation. So Keller tonight, Minor last night. Got Chris Bubich, who's kind of in the rotation right now. He is there, and Hernandez, of course, and Singer and Danny Duffy still on the injured list for the Royals. So I don't know. Who knows? The White Sox are a terrific team. They're going to win the division and be in the playoffs. I don't expect the Royals to win 4 from the White Sox. And heck, the win last night broke a 10-game losing streak to them at Kauffman Stadium, which was ridiculous that somebody can come in there. But I think last night's maybe it was one of the Tigers' wins pushed them over 500 at home for the season too, didn't it? Or,
yeah,
which is pretty good, right, for a team that's going to finish probably not in the playoffs and to be over 500 at home. And I don't know, some of those crowds over the weekend looked pretty good.
Yeah, they had. I'm trying to remember if it was Friday night. It was one of those Friday or Saturday. They had a really big crowd. They've actually, you were mentioning the White Sox. They played not at Kauffman necessarily, but they played against the White Sox pretty well. They hadn't played them since May, and it was mid-May. That was I was looking back at it. It was they split in Chicago. I think that was the series coming off of the 11-game losing streak, and they split, and they almost won the series. I think if I remember right, the last game was the Wade Davis blew it at the end, and Matheny was all upset about the play at the plate and the replay.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that was how that series ended. And if they win that game, which wasn't a guarantee, but if they won that game, they would have won that series against the White Sox. It's just a long time ago, at least in terms of the season. I think about 2 months ago, but that's the last that they played the White Sox. They haven't played bad against the White Sox this season overall at home.
Right. Yeah, you jarred my memory. I remember that was the pass ball and the wild pitch that and Wade Davis tried to put the tag down at the plate.
Cam Gallagher, right? Gallagher decided to try and make the tag, and it was and it was the replay, and that's when Matheny voiced his displeasure with the replay system, which he backtracked on. Was a couple of days later, but it was rather colorfully. Yeah.
So starting pitching, obviously, probably the biggest part of the success here in the last week. But my gosh, they are killing the ball too. I mean, what power! First of all, the weekend series with I guess going back to Milwaukee, this series, the Earl Weaver 3-run homer specials. I mean, how many they had? I think they had 4 in 3 games, or 4 games in a row, or something with a 3-run homer. They had 2 in one game because of the Tigers game, the 9-8 win. They had 2 3-run homers in that game. Salvi had them on back-to-back nights.
I know Salvi back-to-backs. Who was the other 3? It was Salvi had a 3-run homer. I don't remember else who had a 3-run homer in that game.
See, I thought I wrote them down. Santana had them.
Santana, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, and now what Jorge Soler has done the last 2 nights is just, very 2019 Jorge Soler.
Oh yeah, just 4 home runs in 2 games. That's all. And now it's 6 in his last 6 games.
Right. All of which have traveled about 1 million miles. The one he hit, first one he hit last night. I mean, I'm glad the scoreboard. I thought he was going to knock down the scoreboard. The thing was hit so hard. There really is 2019 Jorge Soler in it.
It looks like it. I mean, the way where you got to a point in 2019 where when he came to the plate, you expected the ball was going to go out. It didn't matter the count. And last night, the second home run was on an 0-2 pitch, and that's where it really sort of hit me. It was like, okay, it's at that point where any swing now, he can take the ball deep, and you're almost expecting it. And it's crazy to think because he's still batting, I think, like 190. But in this segment of the season right now, he's at that place where you saw in 2019. I mean, it's obviously, I'm sure the pessimistic side is like, well, it's too late, and why isn't it coming now? And it's not going to make a big difference. But I mean, again, this is also, for the people who are like, why are they putting him in the lineup every day? It's like, well, this is part of the reason. And they did sort of back off of him a little bit at certain times, but this is what they were trying to get to.
Right. All right. So the baseball stat nerd stat of the day is he was the 5th Royal to go 2 home runs on consecutive days or consecutive games. And so, but the other stat that I saw that was, you really had to, stretch the definition. But the first player in Major League history to accomplish this, 2 home runs in consecutive games while hitting under 200 with at least 200 at bats. So, he's the best of the absolute worst.
Yeah, that's
the Mendoza home run group.
Right. Stands alone.
And to think that I remember looking at it and I'm being like, wait a minute, it's like 2 home runs in back-to-back games, and it's like, like you said, it's only happened 5 times. And the 4th time was Salvi, like a couple months ago, and it's and it's sort of like, and like you said, it's back-to-back games because it was like the June 1st and June 3rd because they had an off day in between. But Salvi had those, during that stretch when Salvi just couldn't stop hitting home runs. But yeah, it was just to think, it's like this is the same season that has produced the record that sort of they're at right now. So
It's been fun to watch, and in his 3rd at bat, after he hit the home runs in his first 2 last night, he hit a ball so hard up the middle. And I'm watching the game, and Ryan Lefevre and Rex Hudler were talking about how much it hurt the hand of, of the infielder who fielded. That's how hard he was hitting the ball last night. So it's really been fun to see Jorge Soler return to his 2019 form, and to see the Royals hitting the ball out of the yard. And none of these are cheap either. I think the 449 was the one to center field last night, and everything over 400 for these guys. So we're going to talk about Jorge Soler and the trade deadline approaching. How much has he improved his stock? And there are some other Royals on that list as well after we hear this from the University of Kansas Health System.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
And we're back on SportsBeat Live. Send us your questions and comments about the Royals. We will get to them, and we've got the experts here to answer them, Vahe Gregorian and Lynn Worthy. So we're talking about Jorge Soler before the break. The Major League Baseball trade deadline quickly approaching, and all you have to do is type in a Whit Merrifield or a Danny Duffy or Jorge Soler in the Twitter search feed, and you'll see all kinds of speculation and rumors about them. But nobody knows nothing. But let's talk philosophically about this. The Royals are playing great baseball right now. Of course, they would be playing great baseball when it would be just the time to get rid of some of these guys. Mike Minor would be another one who you'd think he's pitched 2 back-to-back gems. Gotta go, see what you can get for him. But if the Royals are going to part ways with a Merrifield, a Soler, a Duffy, a Minor, what do they need to get back? Do they need to get back prospects? Because in any of those cases, they are trading proven major league, proven players who can help a team in the final couple months of the season. What do you think, Brian?
Well, first I want to reiterate something you said and refer, if people didn't see it, refer people to Lynn's article with Whit Merrifield the other day, because it was really good insight about how many times he's thought he was probably gone just because of the rumor mill. Not anything the Royals are telling him, and he expects the Royals will be candid with him, but to the point where he's looking at Airbnbs in other cities because he doesn't know if he's gone. And so, we'll see what happens. I think one other thing before we go to what they should get back is I think the whole thing we have to really understand is who they see as a cornerstone and who they don't, who's untradeable. And I feel like from what we've picked up from Dayton, at least publicly, and talking to other officials behind the scenes, the only untouchables really seem to be Sal, Bobby Witt, and even Mondesi. That to me seems to be it. Now, there's probably other guys that they prefer to be part of this. I think Witt sits right at that strange intersection, right, where he's still enticing to others. He's 32, up there a little bit, but still young enough that playing well. That I'd sure like him to be a part of the future of what this Royals team is. I feel like the future will be better with him here still. So now, finally, to your point, I mean, I feel like they need to get something significant if they're going to move him. Seems like it would have to be in the form of prospects, because I don't know who they would get that's more productive than this, unless you think you're just able to turn something for a younger version. I'm not saying it would equate that way exactly, but I just think I don't think you should move him gratuitously, obviously, just for a little pop. But Lynn, I see the wheels turning.
Yeah, with Witt, I'm Merrifield. As we keep.
Yeah, you got to
wanna
distinguish
make
the
sure.
Wits.
Yeah. My bad. Merrifield.
But I feel like I'm just not sure that they would trade him for prospects. Like in some of the years past, it's been okay. You're going to deal a guy, particularly if he's getting towards the end of a contract, because you need to get something for him. Like, okay, he might walk away at the end of the season anyway. We're going to get something for him. Controllable young guys that you could still have in the organization for multiple years. With Witt, he's still got Merrifield. He's still got the rest of this year, next year, a club option. So he's still controllable for a couple of years, at least in theory, with pretty good contract. And he's an everyday guy at the major league level, two-time All-Star. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if they're not going to move him unless they're going to get something they feel like going to help them immediately or close to immediately at the big league level, because I feel like it's a different situation than some of the other ones, where, like I say, where in the past it's been get something for him. Like if you're able to move Jorge Soler, I think you get something for him, prospect in that situation, maybe. I mean, again, he's not having a great year, but this recent run, it might be get something for him. I'm not sure a guy like Duffy, especially with the injury, where he's on the IL right now, but you still hear these teams that are supposedly interested on the rumor mill. I'm not sure if that one is different or if that's still a get something for him, because he's also at the end of his contract. So I don't know what the market would bear out for, with the injury, with end of contract, which in some ways might be even more attractive because it's not going to tie a team up long term. But I think each one of these is different. I think there's certain guys where it's get something for them, and if it's prospects, that's okay. But at the same time, I feel like they're still looking at, they want to be in contention sooner than later. It's not, 2 or 3 years ago where it's like, okay, we'll take somebody who might help us a couple years from now. I think they're trying to speed that time up, where giving away a two-time All-Star who's helping you every day in the big leagues now for somebody who's at the lower level of the minors, I'm not sure that they're thinking that way.
I like the distinction you made that I kind of thought but didn't really say very well, which was close to ready type prospect, right? Somebody you think is, if we're thinking this is all about 2022 and 2023, right? I mean, the near future, it seems like that needs to be a mandatory, starting point on that.
Because you can see Merrifield as being in the lineup
Yeah.
for those teams, and
Right.
being, all-star level
Yeah.
second baseman or whatever position he plays. And his versatility is fantastic. I can see where. So the teams that we've seen prominent in the rumor mill with Merrifield are the Seattle Mariners and the New York Mets this week, and Mariners close to playoff, in playoff contention and just desperate for postseason baseball because it hasn't happened there in so long. And of course, the Mets, I would think, would probably overspend for someone like Merrifield just because of the Mets.
And why would you move Whit Merrifield unless you get the other team to overspend? I guess that to me is sort of a bottom line. Like, again, as you pointed out, club control a couple more years, good contract, highly productive, good teammate, the works. I mean, I don't know. I'm not at all convinced they'll move him, but I mean, it might be happening while we're on the air.
That's right. Let's see what Twitter says. That's why Lynn continues to check his phone.
What? Did you hear something?
The text alert. Duffy's interesting too because of the contract situation. Becomes a free agent and he's injured, obviously. But I've heard Dodgers, Giants, West Coast. That NL West race is really you talk about teams that could be willing to overspend just because of what position they're in right now. And I see Duffy, if he leaves the Royals for someone else in for the stretch run, a 2 or 3 inning guy, and just to get through the lineup maybe one time after in the 6th or 7th inning. So that's just my thought on Duffy. I know we hate to see him go. We hate to see any of these guys go, really. I mean, because I do see Duffy as that 2 or 3 inning guy for the Royals in the future as this young pitching staff develops, and Duffy's the wise old man in the bullpen who could be a closer, could be multiple inning guy. The one that's really interesting to me though is Soler and what he's done in the last week, and is that going to catch the attention of some of a team that's looking for a middle of the lineup bat? Has he done enough? Does he need to? Obviously, they want him to continue to hit like this, but has he done enough to make himself attractive enough to deal? And should the Royals get anything they can for him?
I'm not sure if it's any. Well, I'm not sure how attractive he has or hasn't made himself, but I think to do it against the Tigers and then now do it against Chicago and some solid pitchers, like Lance Lynn, and if he does it the rest of this series, I mean, because the deadline's not till Friday, so if he keeps showing things against one of the top teams against some solid pitching, then maybe because there's always somebody, or at least, and I hate being vague like that, but I prefer you have like an idea of some specific teams, but when you're talking about potential trades, but there's always somebody in theory who needs a bat that can change a game, like with one swing, or whether that's a bat off the bench or a guy that you can plug into a certain situation because you need power, and that can make a difference for a team, especially a team in contention in that final month of the season, not having that bat or having that bat. And depending on where that particular team sits, maybe they're more willing to give up something because they need to make that run this year, or they need that or they've had an injury and now it's like, okay, well, we're right on the cusp, and if we can get 5 home runs in September, that might be the difference between playoffs or not. And the guy that would have been able to give those home runs is now gone or injured or whatever it is. So that might exist. I'm just not sure how teams are looking at what he's done that first part of the season and what these last 6 games, if that's going to be enough to lure people in, and then what the asking price is probably going to play a big factor in that too, because if the asking price is too high on a guy who obviously saw those first couple of months, then it might be easier for teams to back away from the vehicle.
Yeah. No, that's right. But where is Soler contract-wise?
He's a free agent at the end of the season.
So really, that makes it even more interesting because the Royals might have to make a big decision on what to do with, do they want him, and if they can't move him, if he's not moved this week or moved any time really, and continues, say he ends up with 23 home runs this year or something that just seemed impossible at the All-Star break. And the Royals have to decide whether the second half Jorge Soler was the real Jorge or was it the first half?
Along the lines of what you're saying, what is it he would, let's say he's not traded, I mean, what is it he would have to do to make the Royals or this panel think that he ought to be part of their future? I feel like there's a big burden of proof on him.
What that is, Vahe, is what you're trying to say. That's a column.
Well, let me record this and see what you guys have. But it is an interesting question, right? I mean, because whatever happens now, I mean, I guess he could be so, in fantasy land, he could be so torrid, so hot, just great numbers. What does that do to how you feel about the first few months of the season? What does it do to tell you it won't happen that way again, as they're falling 17 games under 500?
And my feeling, at least up until this point, has always been once, like in 2019, if he had followed up last year and was healthy and looked like 2019, then it would have been more of a question then on whether or not they would extend him. But I think once he had sort of the ups and downs, the injuries last season, and the fact that they gave the long-term big contract to Salvador Perez, I felt like that sort of closed the door on them extending Soler. Now, I don't know if he's even able to do enough in this last stretch to change that. I doubt it, but who knows? I also feel like going forward, and they've played him in the outfield, but I still feel like he's a DH, and I feel like you need to have that flexibility in that DH spot because Salvy's going to play DH. I mean, like this season, he's still played in every game so far, and that's because when he's not catching, he's at DH. And then if you're bringing up certain guys and you've got these guys who you can move around different positions, then the DH spot might be pivotal in terms of just keeping guys in the lineup, and whether that means moving Whit around to the outfield, and that means somebody else has got a DH, or if that means Salvy's at DH and somebody else has to be in the field because Salvy's at DH. If you have a guy who is going to take up most of those at bats at DH, and that sort of gums up the works a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't think long term it's really in the cards, but I'm not sure if it's possible for him to do something to change it. And then what if he does do something this last month that makes you have to think about it?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Those are good points.
Yeah.
Good points. Okay, let's end it on this question. What do we think of the Cleveland Guardians? Do you have a thought?
I knew that they needed to move on. I'm still grappling with Guardians. Just doesn't roll off the tongue, but I know that's not the most important thing. But Lynn? What do you got?
I think it's going to take a little time to get used to. I'm just not sure. I don't know.
It didn't wow you. It obviously didn't pack a punch when you saw the announcement, right? But they weren't like, oh, this is horrible.
No, it
somewhere
wasn't.
in between that, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
horrible, but it also makes me wonder if, it's a telling sign of what they thought people's reaction would be that they dropped it on the old Friday news dump board.
Let's just see if we get this in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's funny how, it's like when you hear a song the first time, you don't exactly know, like, even if it's by one of your favorite artists, right? So I need to marinate in it a little bit. But I think I will come to feel like the feel of how it sounds is going to matter more to me in some ways than the meaning, which sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's part of it, right? It's part of what you'd measure in a nickname.
Just judging from afar, I do think that fans of Cleveland baseball have started the separation from the Indians. I mean, there's no going back, right? And I don't see a lot of outcry, for the Indians. Maybe not being there, if I was there, I'd have a different perspective. But at least just following it on social media, you don't see people raging to bring back the Indians or ticked off at for the name change. And maybe typical of Cleveland, they'll almost like Gritty, the Philadelphia Flyers mascot. Once people started criticizing it, the people of Philadelphia really rallied around Gritty.
That's so true.
And maybe that'll happen with the Guardians as well.
What I'm waiting to see is if the retired Chiefs horse Warpaint shows up in Cleveland now, so they can honor their past.
Yes, we bid farewell to war paint with a press conference yesterday. So, all right, let's leave it there. A lot of other topics we didn't get to. We will try to get to them next Tuesday when we visit you again. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Beth Welsh, our producer. Thanks to the University of Kansas Health System. Thanks to Vahe Gregorian and Lynn Worthy for stopping by and talking Royals. We'll do it again next week.